What's up, guys? This week's video, so I had a little bit of technical difficulties, I guess you could say, which is why this video is being uploaded late. Um, but also in the process of troubleshooting the issue and resolving it ultimately, I decided to do my first reaction video per se. I've never done one of these before, but the idea was somewhat attractive because I enjoy watching YouTube anyways, and I find myself frequently engaging with things that I have like comments on and things that I have ideas on myself, and like sort of wishing that I could be in dialogue with some of the people that are speaking in the videos that I watch and so on. So, and plus I watch reaction videos, more like commentary than reactionary, but they are classified as reaction videos. So, and I enjoy them like dubs. There's this guy Dubs that reacts to a bunch of different content on here. Anyway, all that aside, that's just me rambling. Today, we are going to go through just a couple videos or so, like one to two, maybe three videos, and we're just gonna watch them together. If I have any ideas, thoughts, or comments, then I will voice those as we're watching. And we're just gonna take a casual approach to today's video and just kind of kick it together and chill and watch some YouTube. So, also, furthermore, before we dig deeper into this today's video, if you guys have videos that you want me to react to or to watch on camera like this, then feel free to hit my email. You can find my email on my YouTube channel, or you could reach out to me on any other platform. All of my links are available on my YouTube channel. And also, shameless plug, just real quick, cavenhinchy.com. That's my first and last name.com. And you can find my podcast, The CEC Connection, the audio files, which is on YouTube as well. I also have a newsletter on Substack, so you can look up that too. It's Renaissance RVLTN in all caps on the latter word. Abbreviation is really what it is. Anyways, so the first video we got for today is going to be, we're going to watch Kamala Harris addressing us, we the people, right? We're going to watch her speaking to us about some shit. It says VP Kamala Harris makes public statement on Israel-Palestine conflict during the Benjamin Netanyahu visit. So she's commenting on Netanyahu's visit, which happened the other day. He gave a big speech and everything. I wasn't even aware that she was present. I didn't think she came unless this is on a different day or at a different time period than when I was watching. But I did not, or I was not aware that she was present, if that's what this title is suggesting. So let's get into it.
So I just had a frank and constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I told him that I will always ensure that Israel is able to defend itself.
Okay, it looked like this video was uploaded and published one day ago. So that she may had just met with him later. Also, I had heard something about her going to a sorority meeting. I'm underinformed on the details of that or whether it's even true. It came from a reliable source, someone who I get reliable information from typically, but I haven't checked in on that myself yet. But I was under the impression that she was at a sorority meeting or some shit whenever Netanyahu came and delivered his speech when everybody was attacking the Capitol and shit. Um, so, and this says like 1 day ago, so it may not even been in the same time frame as I was anticipating this video to be based in. So, uh, there's an underscore.
Including from Iran and Iran-backed militias such as Hamas and Hezbollah. From when I was a young girl, collecting funds to plant trees for Israel, to my time in the United States Senate and now at the White House, I have had an unwavering commitment to the existence of the State of Israel, to its security, and to the people of Israel. I've said it many times, but it bears repeating. Israel has a right to defend itself, and how it does so matters.
Just real quick, um, I get the sentiment and I agree with the fact that Israel has the right to defend itself, but uh can we get a comment from you, just some sort of opinion on all the graffiti and defacement of our monuments in the Capitol during this whole situation by a bunch of ignorant ideologues who like are brainwashed and just want a reason to go out and spread their fucking emotional tension to other people and direct it at something that feels like a real cause, like they're fighting for something, but really it's just a bunch of bullshit. Or maybe you disagree with that, you know? Maybe you think that they're justified in graffitiing the fact that Hamas is coming, but you condemn Hamas is a terrorist organization out of one side of your mouth, yet the other side of your mouth is filled with nothing but fucking air and silence on something that should go hand in hand with the condemnation of Hamas as a terrorist organization. I mean, come on now. Where's the consistency? We already know, like, she's a pretentious liar, anyways. It's been proven already. She literally went on the Breakfast Club recently talking about like, here's my analysis of the situation coupled with the facts of the situation, which you can look up for yourself here on YouTube. So the facts are she said that she used to smoke weed. Yes, she inhaled was the emphatic point that she made to get the point across that yes, she inhaled it, didn't just fake puff it and subsequently got high. Um Also, then she proceeded. Charlemagne asked her, "Excuse me, I want to know what you were listening to when you were high." He said, "Snoop." That was the bait, uh, intentional or not. That's not what I mean, but that was the little hook. She saw that and latched onto it. Yep, that was Snoop. Also, Tupac. Right? She said she listened to Snoop Dogg and Tupac to get high when she was in college. The problem is, uh, she finished her whole education process, the bar and all that shit in the 80s. I think it was like mid to late 80s. Um and then Tupac and Snoop Dogg were both 90s. The first records they released were both in the 90s. I think one was 91 and one was 93. Pretty sure Pac was 91 and Snoop's was 93. Snoop was Doggy Style and Pac's was Tupacalypse Now in 91. If I don't have the dates backwards. Regardless, they hadn't even dropped in the 80s like that. Yet she says she was listening to them to get high in the 80s. And then on top of that, when she was in California, she arrested a whole shitload of people for smoking weed. And then you gonna come out and say that you smoked it. Which, I mean, maybe that's neither here nor there because she was in college. She's older now. That could be easily argued against. So, whatever to that point. But my analysis, moving on into my analysis of that situation, and maybe I'll pull that video up here in a second too, so just so you guys can see what I'm talking about before we cut this today's video. But my analysis of the situation is she's trying to play her black card, so to speak, to go out and try to, and it's super cringy for anybody who can psychoanalyze sort of what's probably happening. It's extremely cringy and honestly somewhat difficult to even watch. But it's my analysis, my observation that she's trying to be pretentious just to fit in with her black card. That way she can pull in more attention and try to win over voters in a dishonest way, because that is absolutely dishonest. Because she's not being true to who she is. She's not being herself. She's pretending to be somebody she's not in order to secure votes just so she could beat Donald Trump. And that is sleazy as fuck, in my opinion. Like, no integrity whatsoever. Like, no integrity at all. Matter of fact, I'm going to play that video here after this one. I'm gonna look for it and I'm gonna play that video next. That way, you guys can see what I'm talking about. Um, so yeah, let's. Anyways, that was me rambling. Let's continue with the video.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. On October 7, Hamas triggered this war when it massacred 1,200 innocent people, including 44 Americans. Hamas has committed horrific acts of sexual violence and took 250 hostages. There are American citizens who remain captive in Gaza. Sagi Deko Hen, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, Idan Alexander, Keith Siegel, Omer Nutra, and the remains of American citizens Judy Weinstein, Gad Haggai, and Itai Hen are still being held in Gaza. I have met with the families of these American hostages multiple times now, and I've told them each time they are not alone, and I stand with them. And President Biden and I are working every day to bring them home. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
Agreed. Right. Reasonable. And I get the sentiment, whether or not you're genuinely compassionate about that or not. Agreed. However, what about the border you're in charge of? Don't we have a safety crisis going on near our border and inside of our own country right now? I mean, have you even visited the border since you got called out on not having visited the border to your face, to where all of Americans who were watching that engagement, that dialogue in that interview, probably cringed at how terribly and unsuccessfully you dodged that question, trying to manipulate the way that your words come out of your mouth to make it seem like you were handling it when really you just used a bunch of loaded fucking words that were extremely ambiguous. I mean, I agree it's bad for people to suffer. I agree with a lot of what you're talking about with the whole Israel engagement, support, etc. I agree with the sentiments. I agree with the ideas in that regard, in that respect specifically. But please, can we fucking do something about the border under which you are like the border that you are in control of, that you're responsible for. How the fuck are you working tirelessly? Hey, here's my thing. How are you working every day tirelessly with President Joe Biden to bring home hostages and do all this shit overseas whenever you can't even do the bare minimum to provide safety within our country for Americans in our home, where we've got little girls and boys and all kinds of people being raped and murdered and shit on a regular basis now, more than ever before, because of the border alone. And then the fentanyl, the drugs. I've lost two people already, one of them to an overdose. People I consider brothers. One of them was from a car accident and he was on his bicycle. I've lost a brother to fentanyl overdose already. Something like, you talk about wanting to address the root causes. That was one of the reasons that she's explicitly given for not being at the border, because she said she was somewhere else. I think she said what, Guatemala? No, not Guatemala. I forget where she said it was. She said she was in somewhere, another country, trying to get to the root cause of the border crisis, and hasn't even visited the border itself one time. Hasn't spoken with the director one time of the Border Patrol. These are red flags everywhere. We got somebody who's being pretentious, somebody who's already been busted in a lie on camera and audio. We got somebody who has certain responsibilities she's supposed to be taking care of already as it is, and has failed, absolutely failed to do so adequately, even on a basic level. We cannot allow her to take office. She will finish. I don't know if I could say that. She will finish. She will finish off our country. We're already teetering on the edge of a civil war as it is, which may not be avoidable regardless of who gets in office, irrespective of whether it's Trump or fucking Biden somehow ends up in there again, or Harris or Vance or whoever like the fuck ends up. Like, it doesn't matter who is in office, be that her, be it Trump, whoever, we may not be able to avoid a civil war. But if we're going to move into an unforeseen future that is, excuse me, already fraught with strife and stress and conflict, not just here, but everywhere around us, and then also within our own country, which would make it easy if we're all divided for foreign invaders to come in and pick us apart very easily, just like ancient Athens, Greece, just like the Roman Empire. We need somebody leading us who is brazen, who has integrity, who is honest. We need somebody like Trump. I'm not a Trump dick rider. I support Trump all the way as far as I'm concerned, because he is, as far as I can see, the best hope for our future as a nation. However, I also supported Ramaswamy. If Ramaswamy was running, he would be an equal, as far as I'm concerned, it would be Trump versus Ramaswamy in my head. Who am I going to vote for? Because I also, so it's not about like the person, it's about the ideas. And do I believe, not only do I believe you, but do I believe in you? And Kamala, I think these are dangerous waters. And for people who aren't aware, awake, conscious, and don't think for themselves, who hear things or like have some sort of emotional tie to a certain community, which is sort of like the same reason a lot of black folk or people who grew up in those communities, like myself included, before I started waking up and really thinking for myself, I have family members and all my people around me supporting BLM and shit because it's like heritage, right? It without actually investigating the truth of all the politics behind it, the idea on its face seems like something that we should all be in favor of. And if you're not, then it seemed like you would be prejudiced because that's how I saw it initially before I knew anything about what it actually was. BLM, I'm talking about here. Before I knew anything about what it actually was and who was behind it, what was going on behind the scenes, all the fucking IRS paperwork and shit, before I figured out it was a scam and all the shit was brought into light to show the objective truth and not what the media tried to portray and lie about and distort, that's when I woke up. Before that, I was right there next to my people in the trenches, ready to march right alongside them. Like most people that I've known in my entire life do not think for themselves. And unfortunately, that is the case in socioeconomically speaking and lower. I can't even say race. Like a lot of people will say in black communities, but it ain't even that way anymore. Maybe once upon a time in the fucking 80s, early 90s, some shit like that. But guess what, bro? I grew up in this shit too. It ain't about race. It's never been about race. A lot of Democrats, I won't just stick the label and say all Democrats, but I'll say it's primarily the left-leaning individuals who try to play the whole race card shit. But it's not about race. It never has been. And when race gets brought into it, it's either a distortion and a repeated ideology without somebody thinking for themselves, or it's an intentional divisive tactic to try to separate us and and for God knows what reasons, right? Because you know it's not just a fucking one dimensional, two dimensional reason. There's layers and layers to this shit. Anyways, excuse me, it got off on my rant there. Let's let her finish speaking. And then I'm gonna move into the video so you guys can see her interacting on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne and them.
Thanks to the leadership of our President, Joe Biden, there is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and a hostage deal. And it is important that we recall what the deal involves. The first phase of the deal would bring about a full ceasefire, including a withdrawal of the Israeli military from population centers in Gaza. In the second phase, the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza entirely, and it would lead to a permanent end to the hostilities. It is time for this war to end, and end in a way where Israel is secure, all the hostages are released, the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can exercise their right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. There has been hopeful movement in the talks to secure an agreement on this deal. And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done. So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home. And let's provide much-needed relief to the Palestinian people. And ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state solution. And I know right now it is hard to conceive of that prospect, but a two-state solution is the only path that ensures Israel remains a secure, Jewish, and democratic state. And
I don't think Hamas is going to agree to that. I could be completely mistaken in this, but what weren't that or wasn't that offered previously? Hasn't that already been like an option that has been proposed in the past? I could be completely wrong about that. Please correct me if I am wrong about that. I like it's on the very outer edges of my memory, but it seems like I read that in an article or something. Um, I don't know. I want to say maybe a month or two ago. Yeah, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, what I'm referencing, and you can either correct me or clarify real quick in the comments, I'll look it up after the video. But anyways, just for other people who are watching this, because that would take another video for me to just come and correct that. So yeah, drop a comment if you guys know what I'm referencing. Anyways, I could be wrong.
And one that ensures Palestinians can finally realize the freedom, security, and prosperity that they rightly deserve. And I will close with this then. It is important for the American people to remember the war in Gaza is not a binary issue. However, too often the conversation is binary, when the reality is anything but. So I ask my fellow Americans to help encourage efforts to acknowledge the complexity, the nuance, and the history of the region. Let us all condemn terrorism and violence. Let us all do what we can to prevent the suffering of innocent civilians, and let us condemn anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate of any kind. And let us work to unite our country. I thank you.
Can you define hate for me? Because coming from a radical left position, there's no fucking telling what is included in hate. Anyways, that's the end of that video. Let me go ahead and look up let's see. Breakfast Club. Boom. We're gonna find that video for y'all, man. Where she's talking to Charlamagne. Education, criminal justice reform, and debating. I agree. Excuse me, with all three of those ideas. Criminal justice and education reform are, I think, necessary. Very much so. The original Hawk Tua girl. We ain't gonna dig into the control on that. Let me see. Harrison was about Obama's. Okay, hang on. Let's go on. Let me put a first name. Kamala Harris. Breakfast Club. Smoking. Weed. That should pop something up. Admitting she smoked weed.
I got high without always thinking about the harm that it could do.
Well, you know, like most Americans over the last 10 years, people's opinion on this issue have evolved.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
So 40 years ago, I smoked marijuana, and I admit it. I'm sure that other people might have done it and may not want to say it in front of 25 million people. My mom's not happy that I just did.
But when you watch Harris's whole interaction on camera, the situation plays out very differently. DJ Envy asks Harris what she listens to.
Yeah, that's what she's talking about. Let me see here.
Wake that ass up early in the morning. The Breakfast Club.
Yeah,
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy Angela.
Hold up.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes.
Miss Kamala
let me
Harris.
see.
Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris. How are you?
Kamala
I am very well. Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome back. Now you're a
Identity
2020
politics.
presidential candidate.
I am.
Yes.
Why? Why did you do that to yourself? I'm happy you did though, but why?
I wanted to ask, with Barack
Let's just watch through this a little bit, and let's see where they talk about smoking weed. So we're gonna start it from right here on the criminal justice reform tab, and if we don't find nothing about it in there, then we'll move on.
that
Well,
was
black. I get what you're saying, but I think black people just have questions for people who may not know who exactly you are. So it's just basic questions. Like, so they say they want to know, what did you do to hurt black people as a prosecutor? Because you said you regret some things.
Well, what I regret is not having done enough.
Mhm.
I regret not having done enough. If I had been there longer, if I had had more in terms of bandwidth, I would have done more around creating initiatives, for example, in the juvenile justice system. That was something.
I mean, she did. Didn't she also advocate trying to get rioters from the BLM shit out? Didn't she do that? Or am I mistaken on that too? Did she not go and try to absolve a bunch of the rioters from all the bullshit? I don't know. Let me know in the comments.
Thing that was always on my agenda to focus on. I didn't get.
And what about all the people that she prosecuted in California for marijuana charges who went, faced incarceration for that? What have you done, Kamala? What the fuck are you gonna lie about next?
Get to that.
Mhm.
But I will say this, that I know also that the reentry initiatives that I created were a model. Well, back when I did it, folks weren't doing it. There were very few. And you can.
She must just realize or think that all black people just like have this unit fucking hive mind, like we gotta stick together mentality, and like everybody has that coupled with not thinking for themselves, right? It's like she thinks that all black people just have this hive mind where they think the same things on the surface and never actually look anything up for themselves to find the truth. Because she's out here in the streets, as she said, literally she said that verbatim, like it was one of the most cringy things I ever saw in my life. But talk about I'm out here in the street. She like her intonation, her the way she articulates herself, her diction, right? Her speech and oration and rhetoric changes according to who she's talking to. And this would be forgiving and acceptable and reasonable if we consider like how some people will be more formal or present themselves in a more formal manner when maybe speaking to their banker versus speaking to their mother or brother or whatever. That's natural. Like a lot of people do that, have different like sort of modes they lock into, but hers is very particular. And the reason that I think that it matters is because she like turns on her ghetto, I guess, which is stereotypical of her, like in itself, to do that, because that just assumes just because you're engaging with a black person that it's automatically gonna be some ghetto shit. I know black dudes that are more white than I am, which technically I'm French and Italian, but that's besides the point. There are white people out here. There are all kinds of different, people out here of all different ethnicities that are whiter, like in the stereotypical context, than my fucking mom is, since she married since she started dating the redneck dude that she dated like some years ago, that she fell in love with and like changed her whole personality for. Like there are so many grievances I have with her. And it's like she's doing it in our faces. Like she just thinks that she's going to get away with it because nobody's going to care enough to actually dig for the truth. And the saddest thing is the amount of people that she's actually right about that. Like in reference to. It's crazy. It's It's fucking crazy. The amount of people that actually fall in and play into this bullshit just because of some strong emotional obligation almost to a community that you grew up in because that's your family, that's your people, right? And I get that. Again, I literally grew up around it. This is my family too, bro. My family too. So, but that is not an excuse or a substitution for critical thinking and independent thought. Like you need to know how to think for yourself and acknowledge when you don't have all the facts. You know what I mean? Like, come on, bro. But she's just like in our faces with this shit. When the facts are available objectively to where anybody with an internet connection can find and prove to themselves what the objective truth is, whether or not you're comfortable believing what the truth is or what the manipulation and the lies are, regardless of which you're more comfortable of. Like, if you are somebody who cares about truth, you have to think for yourself, because otherwise you will be pulled in so many different directions. It's impossible to just take somebody's word for what they say it nowadays. Like, unless you have already established rapport with like a foundation of trust and integrity with friends or acquaintances or whatever, colleagues or whatever, you have to think for yourself, period. It's just what it is. And if you don't, you're subject to become an ideologue, just like so many other people nowadays. It's scary. We got kids being raised in this shit, the ones who are actually being raised. And salute to all the parents who are actually trying to do the shit the right way, to make sure that their sons and daughters grow up with a strong mind, a strong heart, and a strong ethical core. Because I would, now more than ever, it's probably harder than it ever has been in history with the interconnectedness of the internet. Everything is available within the snap of a finger. Attention spans are dwindling. People don't know how to, raise their kids with inherent responsibility. Part of the reason for that is because, like, used to, let's say 60, 70 years ago, whatever, it was for the socioeconomic survival of the family unit. The children in the family had to participate to support the family. Right. So like you would naturally, it would be a normality for you to see the sons or the daughters helping set the table to prepare for dinner. Everybody had a role to play. And if one of those cogs in that machine stopped or wasn't moving properly like it should have been and wasn't doing its job, so to speak, then it disrupted the entire flow of everything for the entire family unit. That's why children grew up with strong integrity and morals and a sense of responsibility and work ethic. That's why kids grew up that way, especially like the kids that were growing up on the farms who had to help out with shit, like, bro. But now it's like we have more opportunity to use those skills that like we would have gained naturally just being raised in a household 70 years ago. Nowadays, we have more opportunity to use those skills to our advantage socioeconomically, financially, purely, however you want to cut it. But back then, you didn't have as much opportunity to have those work in your favor, but you had a naturally conducive environment to cultivating that inside of your children, inside of you, inside of the individual. So it's like we've swapped. Now there's more opportunity to use the effects, but we don't have an environmental, we don't have a conducive environment to the characteristics that lead to those results. But 70 years ago, it was literally the complete reverse. And so the way to do that, this is why I say respect to the parents who actually try in this regard, is because the way to do that is to, and now it's not as much of a fluid like socioeconomic survival process because we have leisure nowadays, but we can still, as parents, integrate these things into our lives when raising our children and even like changing ourselves and growing up for ourselves, right? We can integrate these principles and make sure our kids have core responsibilities that they know and they are aware of, that they're contributing something that is necessary for the flourishing of the entire family unit, and that if they don't do their job, then like it's actually a disruption that makes them feel important, like they're genuinely needed for something. That helps foster responsibility like you wouldn't believe. And then plus like the negotiation with your children, you have to cultivate critical thinking skills in your kids. You can't just expect them to grow up and just like realize how they, well, first of all, a lot of parents don't even know how to think for themselves. So that's already, you know, a non-starter in many cases, which is exactly my situation. That's how I grew up. All my family is that way. It was by the grace of God Almighty that I finally had the opportunity presented to me of like absolute lucidity and clarity to wake up like that with the epiphanies, the sequence of epiphanies I had in my life. One of the biggest ones being the coming of my son. And so, you know, I feel like the family hero, the one that's got to come back and save everybody because of that. That's also why I'm not going to dig into all that. You could watch the channel intro. I'll actually link it here in this video somewhere if you want to go watch like my testimony, so to speak. But yeah, man, as parents, like just to finish up the parenting bit there, the thought process I was having about that, like it's dangerous nowadays to have kids, especially if you have daughters. I thank God that I have a son, because I can train him to be a warrior, and that's what we need right now is warriors who have strong minds and intellect and are bold and willing to challenge ideas, challenge established conceptions when they are on the brink of bringing total fucking disaster. So, anyways, let's let's continue with the video.
Can talk to a lot of elected Black prosecutors today in cities around the country who will say that what I did gave them the inspiration or provided a model for what could be done by a prosecutor having the power to make the decision instead of asking somebody for permission.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll also say this. Look at my record in terms of being in the United States Senate. It has been a record of, I am proposing that we reform America's bail system.
What could be unburdened by what has been. I had to.
Money bail system and get rid of money bail. Because I know that people are sitting in jail every day in America because they can't afford to pay the $20,000 to get out while they're waiting trial. Meanwhile, the same person who committed the same kind of crime gets out if they've got the money. That's a criminal justice issue. That's an economic justice issue.
Now we're getting into social justice reform in the context of, or criminal justice reform in the context of punishment versus rehabilitation. Like punishment versus rehabilitative justice, and there's a big difference there. And this actually, to bring it back to the parenting thing, even raising your kids. If we read in developmental child psychology, punishment breeds rebellion because you're teaching them to, like, especially once they develop and realize how things work and they start thinking for themselves, kids want to do what they want to do regardless. And when you punish them, they don't like you in the moment that you're punishing them. And all that's teaching them is, like, even though it works immediately, like you'll see effective results immediately after you bust his ass or whatever, you know, put him in timeout and make him sit there and be quiet and don't say shit or take the whatever, you know, there's different ways, but especially, and I'm speaking more so on a toddler level because mine will be 4 in October. So anything beyond that, all I have to go on is like research and theory. I don't have empirical data to test that up against yet. But specifically talking ages up to 4, let's say, discipline and this applies in the same exact way because it's how humans are designed. Discipline versus rehabilitation, or let's say rehabilitation slash discipline versus punishment, and shit like that. So punishment, you get effective results immediately because you bust your child's ass. He's immediately gonna stop what he's doing because he don't like that. He's gonna cry. He's gonna calm down, and then boom, everything will be smooth after a little bit. But then guess what? That behavior is gonna continue. It's gonna spiral, and as he grows with that pattern of discipline, which is actually not discipline anyways, it's just punishment. It eventually turns in to rebellion and okay, how can I do this without getting caught next time? And that's just what it is. And but then discipline is positive reinforcement, just like training a dog or anything else, like positive reinforcement. Because if you're feeling bad, or if you're made to feel bad, or if you're made to hurt, or your feelings are hurt, or whatever, as a consequence of something that you've done, even if it was something that you've done that maybe warranted in most households, or like maybe because I recently just changed my beliefs around this as a consequence of learning new information in child psychology. Because I was the one busting my little boy's ass when he needed it. Like, no, bro, we're gonna walk a tightrope around here. I'm gonna negotiate with you. I'm gonna be open. You could talk to me and you could trust me, but there's some lines you ain't gonna cross. And I'm gonna teach you how to be a soldier. And so, like, yes, that is still necessary to teach them how to be a soldier. But the thing that I was going wrong, and I think where a lot of parents go wrong, most likely as a consequence of being underinformed regarding child psychology, is excuse me, when you're feeling negative, and especially as a kid, even as adult though, you can test this empirically within yourself. But now, and also keep in mind, kids are underdeveloped and they're more so like why, and they don't understand fully the concept of why, but they also know that they want to do what they want to do. And when you stop them or try to tell them no, especially when they don't understand the why behind it, and also even more so when you can't even explain the why behind them because they don't understand the concept of why yet, like it gets a little tricky, and it's even more so the case for them. But, and to loop back around to the context of that, the last time that somebody made you to feel negatively, unless you already have a mindset cultivated to where you receive information like that and convert it into productive change for yourself. Because if you're mature, you've matured psychologically and intellectually, then that may be something that is true of you, because it is for me largely. And so, setting that aside, which is why I say even more so for a child, because the maturity is not there. The last time you were made to feel negatively as a consequence of something that you did, you may have stopped immediately because of the being reprimanded, the shame, whatever the scenario is. You were made to feel a certain negative way. You're not thinking, well, thank you for that insight or that guidance. Let me correct that behavior from now on, because that's assuming that the person you're talking to, which is another reason it does not work for kids to discipline them this way, that's assuming they're mature enough to entertain the lesson in the way that you're delivering it and convert it into the lesson that they're supposed to learn to then be able to change their behavior. What you have to understand, again, particularly with children, is that they're not mature. So they're going to say, they're going to think, how do I feel right now? This is terrible. I don't like you as a consequence of this. They're not going to be thinking about what they did. They're not going to be thinking about, well, I should handle myself better next time. Because again, that presupposes maturity. Rather, the best thing to do is to find a way, without compromising your authority as the parent, without compromising your integrity, without compromising respect, and displaying compassion and self-worth to the other individual, again, particularly children, without compromising any of that stuff. There is a balance there that has to be stricken. and you have to approach things in a way to somehow stimulate positive emotional responses out of your children and to be benign when they are throwing a fit or getting disrespectful with you. You can't get disrespectful back with them, or at least that's objectively not the right way to handle it, according to child psychology, developmental child psychology. The right thing to do is to be unresponsive largely to that stuff. Like, for example, to put it in, to bring it down from the abstraction into an empirical, pragmatic example, if your child is throwing a fit and calling you out your name, doing it, screaming, hitting stuff, yada yada, whoop de whoop, then what most people would do is come here, pull your pants down, whoop your ass, send you to your room with nothing on, no TV, no toys allowed. Right? That would have been something that I would do. I'll bust your ass and send you to your room with no TV. That would have been a solution. He would have cried for a little bit. He would have chilled out. I would have sat down, made him look me in my eyes. We have a conversation about what just happened. I try to break things down on a level that he can understand it. And then we have a good time after that. And it don't happen much. But that's like, that may work. I only have to like get on him a couple times throughout the week. And he's solid for me, especially me, not as much for his mother because it's the feminine versus the masculine thing, and he respects me more as the masculine role model, which is just a natural thing anyways, especially with boys. But that is only effective in the short term, and you got to beware of this shit because it does seem effective in the short term, but in the long term, it's not. And that is one of the reasons why he's gotten progressively worse in these specific contexts all the way up to almost 4 years old now, is because of the way that I and his mother have been disciplining him. We've been punishing him. It's been the traditional, what I, thought was the right way. But it's not been the right way. And now we face the consequences and the byproduct of our decisions. But it's not too late to change that. So where she's talking about rehabilitative justice versus punishment, this is why I actually agree with her on this, is because this is true in psychology all the way from a toddler to a full-grown ass adult who's already mature. And sometimes, like, it's easier to reach a toddler than it is to reach the adult. And sometimes it's the other way around. But either way, that positive reinforcement, that is the type of shit that's going to encourage an individual to really reflect on, okay, I did this good behavior and I got this out of it. And then no response to the bad behavior at all. It's like over time, that's going to compound because the bad behavior responsiveness is going to sort of plateau after a certain period, but the good behavior is going to elevate the emotional state of the individual. And so when you've got benign bad behavior, when you got like benign results from bad behavior, and you've got increasingly compounding good results, positive results from good behavior, that's going to be inspiring. That's going to motivate people to want to make changes. That's where the change happens, the permanent change, the change that is represented through integrity. And so why wouldn't it be true for the criminal justice system? And also, again, it because everything has been the way it has been for such a long time now, if we did make reformations like that, it would take a decent amount of time for that to actually start to bear real fruit like we envision it when we say criminal justice reform. Because first of all, it doesn't, it takes decades to get us to this point. It's going to take just some damn time to get us out of this into something new. But it's always, furthermore, it's always going to get worse before it gets better. That's true of raising toddlers. raising kids. That's true of human psychology. So it's going to be true for adults who are in the penitentiary or, you know, on the streets, what the fuck ever. So that's my little rant on that part of what she's talking about criminal justice reform. I think this video is actually kind of running a little lengthy right now. We're gonna watch a little bit more of this section, then maybe we'll hop to one of these other sections. But before we get off of this video, I'm going to show you guys the footage of her talking about smoking weed. It is on this specific interview in the Breakfast Club, without a doubt. I just gotta find exactly where it was at. So let's dive back in. I'm gonna try to keep my commentary to a somewhat of a low for a moment till we get through a little bit more of this.
Let me tell you what I will do when I am elected president of the United States. I will put in place an attorney general who, instead of what's happening now, which is that they are shutting down pattern and practice investigations into police departments around this country that have a proven record of discrimination and racism, they're shutting those down.
God.
Those need to be reinvigorated. Consent decrees. My full intention would be to bring those back up, which is looking at how we need to monitor what is happening around proven racism and discrimination in the criminal justice system. So, you know, there are some people who are just going to say that we don't want prosecutors. There shouldn't be prosecutors. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to convince them.
And I think they think it's weird. Like, for whatever reason, they think a black person should never lock up other black and brown people.
Yeah, but here's how I feel about that, Charlamagne. Are you saying that if a child is molested, if a woman is raped, if somebody is shot down and killed,
they should go to jail.
Well,
that's
right.
Absolutely.
And let's not buy into the myth that black folks don't want law enforcement. We do. We don't want excessive force. Mm-hmm. We don't want racial profiling. But certainly, if somebody burglarizes my house, I'm going to call the police, as are most of us, and say, come get this, you know what.
They don't even got to go that far. If I see him sitting in the cul-de-sac too long, I'm calling
911, what's the emergency?
Right, but all of that being said, there is no question that this system is deeply flawed, that there is systemic racism in the system. We have a problem with math.
I was going to try, but where? We have individuals who may work in certain establishments or whatever, who may be on an individual basis racist. Can you show me any legislation anywhere where black people are, as a consequence of their skin pigmentation, prohibited from doing something, achieving something, being something, becoming whatever, anything that a white, Asian, Hispanic man cannot? Can you point to me an exact place? If any of you in the audience disagree with me, please drop me a credible resource that will prove to me where there is any form of legislation or rules or anything like that that corroborates what she just said about there being systemic racism. Again, I don't disagree that racism exists, clearly, especially the more we talk about it. But that aside, individuals are racist and they act prejudiciously towards people, including me, by the way, because I got face and fucking neck tattoos everywhere. I was in the hospital during the birth of my son, and they was not trying to let me up to see my son. Bro, they was not trying to let me back up. I had already been there. I stepped out to go see my grandmother. I came back. They wasn't even trying to let me back up there. It was during COVID with the masks and shit. So like, I thought that might have been it, but I had already went in and out like 3 times at that point because I had been there already overnight. They wouldn't even let me back in there. That lady stood on the phone, had security over there and everything for like 5-10 minutes before I even got to go back up there with my kid. My BM literally delivering my son. So like, there's people who, act this way as a consequence of being prejudiced as individuals, but I don't see any sort of, as a matter of fact, I see the opposite. What about DEI? What about all the people, black or what the fuck ever, or gay, even at this point, trans, whatever, who are being accepted into colleges, not based on merit, but based on their skin color because they want diversity and inclusion. Motherfuckers don't even deserve it sometimes and be getting in just because of their skin color. So you sit here talking about systemic racism. That's systemic racism against fucking white people. I mean, am I wrong? Come on now.
Mass incarceration, in particular, black and brown men. There is no question about all that. There is no question that no mother or father in America should have to sit down when their son turns 12 and start having the talk with that child about how he may be stopped, arrested, or killed because of the color of his skin.
I also shouldn't have to worry about sending my son to public school and having some teacher trying to cram some pronouns down his throat. Talk about, do you feel like a boy? Are you comfortable in your own skin? Are things okay at home? What you gonna do about that? Can we talk about this? Like, can we hear you say anyway? It says identity politics. Maybe you'll get into it.
There is no question.
You're right.
There's no question.
Have you thought about the game you're going to play with Donald Trump? Because he plays a nasty game. You know, we've seen it with Barack Obama. We've seen it with Hillary Clinton. We've seen it with everybody. So have you started figuring out how you're going to play that game with him? Is it going to be a nasty? Is it nasty for nasty? Is it high road? Is it low road? Have you thought about that at all? Because he's going to go nasty. You know that.
He will. I agree with you. This is going to be a knockdown, drag out. You know, I mentor a lot of people and I tell them, you know, the thing about breaking barriers, I gave the speech actually at Spelman and Morehouse's homecoming recently. And I said, you know, the thing about breaking barriers, I want everybody to be clear about that. You may think breaking barriers means you start on one side of the barrier and then you just end up on the other side of the barrier. No, that's not how it works. There's breaking involved. And when you break things, you get hurt. And sometimes you get cut and you may even bleed. It will be worth it. It will be worth it. And then these kids were looking at me, their eyes all open. I didn't mean to scare them. And I said, look, I don't mean to scare you, but I definitely mean to prepare you. To do what we're talking about is going to involve pain, and it will be worth it.
You're right, except for that last comment. It's not going to be worth it. And what you're doing is going to cause pain for, yes, indeed, all of us. It's going to completely fucking ruin America the rest of the way. In case we weren't already close enough to internal fucking self-destruction.
And it is also going to involve a lot of fun and joy, because that's the way I intend to run this campaign. I intend this campaign to be about not only the standard of success being winning the election, but the standard of success also being lifting folks up, helping to organize folks, empowering folks along the way.
Empowering folks, empowering Americans. I know I keep interjecting here, but she keeps talking about empowering people and shit whenever she was like the equivalent of an industry plant, right? So like in music industry, you got industry plants. The people are groomed and prepared to like play the position and like are like puppets for the puppet masters, and they blow up like out of nowhere overnight, basically because they were like planted in the industry to be successful already. Excuse me, and they're basically seen as an asset. That's kind of what she is, because nobody voted for her. First of all, they sort of just like pulled a little switcheroo, pulled Biden out after he went so hard telling all of us that he's not going to back down and that he's going for the election. And then once they see that nobody's buying the fact that he's not cognitively impaired, then they decide, okay, we're just gonna slip him out and like insert this black woman into this position, because now it's gonna be easier for us to A, try to pull one over on the conservatives, and then B, just let's do some media coverage and try to shape the narrative while we have the upper hand of controlling the narrative for the duration of time that we can do that. That's like, there is no Democrat running up against a Republican, or there is no Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. It is the DNC machine against Donald Trump, or the conservative party. But like we have independents over here on the left, largely, well, I won't say just flat out on the left, primarily the radical left, we have like a hive mind group of individuals who regurgitate the same exact shit over and over and over again.
And we're seeing that. And it didn't take my election to get, but the standard of success also being lifting folks up, helping to organize folks, empowering folks along the way. And we're seeing
there is no power. We are not given power. We are not empowered whenever you argue that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and then spit in our faces by literally putting your own planted candidate for presidency, whom nobody voted for at the last minute after the first presidential debate already. How is this empowering the people? This is taking power away from the people and putting it into your own hands, the hands of your machine. That's not empowerment. That's oppression. And you're gaslighting and manipulating, shaping the narrative to be the exact opposite. That's foul.
That, and it didn't take my election to have that happen. We saw that even in 2018. Mm-hmm. Folks are taken to the streets. They're running for office. They're participating. People realized after 2016, we cannot just sit back and expect that the right thing might happen. If we do not participate, it will not happen.
At least he gave you props. He said you had a great rollout. Best rollout of all the candidates.
Yeah, well, he likes crowd size, and I had a big crowd.
I want to talk to you, because I hear everything you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but some people, it'll go over their head. So I want to address some of these memes.
Okay.
Because this is how I see the false information getting out. There's a meme that says Kamala Harris broke the state record for incarcerating black males.
Well, that's just not true.
You know what a meme is, correct, right?
Yes, I do.
Come on now. Don't date her like that. Come on now.
You know, he went to Hampton. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know.
You used to do mixtapes.
I was talking about that was how long ago it was.
I know.
That I've been in this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying the meme is bullshit.
I'm saying that, listen, there are going to be all kinds of...
There's a clue, by the way, to her timeline in the college and all that, like cassette tapes. That was some early shit.
Allegations being made. And I invite, and I not only invite, I encourage folks to look at the real record. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be people who they want to own and a certain territory in politics, and they are concerned that I understand the issues, and so they're going to try and hit below the belt. And the only thing I can ask is that voters and everyone be informed and educated. But listen, the bottom line, Charlamagne.
No. Don't speed past that. The bottom line is people need to be informed and educated and think for themselves and investigate this shit for themselves. She literally just said that in y'all's face and was apparently right about the fact that you guys are actually not going to do that. That's why she just sped on the fuck past it. Like, come on, man.
I mean, is that my role in the work that I have done has always been about representing the people. Mm-hmm. And as a prosecutor, it was about what we need to do to correct the system. And I stand by that record.
Yeah, another meme says, Kamala Harris is not African-American. Her parents were immigrants from India and Jamaica, and she was raised in Canada, not the United States. And it said, fact. Uh-huh. That's what the meme said.
So I was born in Oakland.
Yeah.
and raised in the United States, except for the years that I was in high school in Montreal, Canada. And look, this is the same thing they did to Barack.
Yes.
This is not new to us.
Yeah, that is actually accurate. They tried to say Barack Obama was like fucking Saddam Hussein and all kinds of shit. Try to say he was a terrorist and a bunch of extra shit. I remember memes pasting fucking a beard and shit on him, making him look like who was it? Osama bin Laden, and saying, I'm just saying Barack Obama is bin Laden. This was a conspiracy to cover it up. They never actually killed him, and some extra shit like that. Like, she's got a point on that. She's right about that, because they did try to do some bullshit. But even that, again, regardless of whether you're conservative or liberal, That is manipulation, and that is the same exact thing as not thinking for yourself and doing your own research. Period. It's the same shit. Conservative, liberal, doesn't matter. You have to think for yourself.
And so I think that we know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do what has been happening over the last 2 years, which is powerful voices trying to sow hate and division among us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to recognize when we're being played.
I'm glad you mentioned Barack.
The fucking hypocrisy. Dude.
A lot of black people question if Barack was black enough. I see them doing the same thing to you. So what do you say to the people questioning the legitimacy of your blackness?
I think they don't.
She says, I used to smoke weed while listening to Snoop Dogg and Tupac when I was in college.
Understand who black people are.
Mm.
Because if you do, if you walked on Hampton's campus or Howard's campus or Morehouse or Spelman or Fisk, you would have a much better appreciation for the diaspora, for the diversity, for the beauty in the diversity of who we are as black people. So I'm not going to spend my time trying to educate people about who black people are. Because right now, frankly, I'm focused on, for example, an initiative that I have. It's called the LIFT Act, that is about lifting folks out of poverty. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the fact that in the United States today, almost the majority of American families who are making under $100,000 a year as a family are a $400 unexpected emergency away from what could be disaster.
When's the last time you've been in the trenches, Kamala? When's the last time you came in the streets? When's the last time you came to these inner city schools to talk to the kids? Do you give a shit about people anyways? Forget just black people. Do you care about people? Do you care about the lower to middle class? No. No, I don't believe it. I need some receipts. You gonna tell me yes to that? I need some receipts because nah.
Which is why I'm proposing that there be a $6,000 tax credit that they can collect at $500 a month, recognizing $500 a month makes all the difference between being able to get through that month without worrying, much less catastrophe. I'm focused on the fact that in the United States today, in 99% of the counties in America, if you are a minimum wage worker working full time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. Those are the things I'm focused on.
Well, let's see. That could be aided by lowering inflation. Oh, but wait, I forgot. Oh, you and Biden are not interested in that. You guys want to drive it the fuck up through the roof. You guys are very good at bullshit rhetoric and very, very bad at implementing things that genuinely help the American people.
How can we turn that around? I do a lot with real estate, and I notice a lot of black people can't afford. They can't get a loan. It's very difficult. It's almost impossible to get a small business loan. How can we help black people and minorities get more loans and get housing and not have to rent apartments for 40 years and actually own something?
That's right. Well, so for example, on the rent piece, but I'll go back to the piece about the.
I actually think Charlemagne might be racist now that I think about it. So I've seen him interviewing like Post Malone and all kinds of shit where he's just like unnecessary trolling and trying to be a bully. Bro, I don't know. That's speculation, admittedly. That's speculation. But he got different energy towards different people. I know that.
Families making less than $100,000 a year. My proposal is about reforming the tax code of this country. And by doing that, we know that we will lift 60% of black households out of poverty with this initiative. When you look at the issue of rent, what I am proposing is that we also recognize that if people are paying over 30% of their income in rent plus utilities, they should get a tax credit. Because to your very point, folks are struggling to pay the rent
or pay the mortgage and are barely holding on. And what we know in particular for Black families is that the greatest source of our economic stability or wealth and the greatest asset we have financially is our home. And we take a great deal of pride in that because we are about the American dream, right? And part of the American dream is you work hard, you play by the rules. You should be able to afford a home that will be your peace. And
Incorrect. That is an outdated path that does not work anymore. Your home is a liability unless you turn it into an asset intentionally. And also, you don't just work hard and then one day you can retire and afford like it doesn't work that way anymore because inflation rates are too fucking high. And if we, do the projections, inflation is going to beat out most of what you earn and anything else like a fucking 401k, whatever, right? You have to essentially adopt some flavor of entrepreneurship in order to genuinely create wealth and like seek out the opportunity that is genuinely available for all Americans. You have to actually adopt some flavor of entrepreneurship though. And by the way, that doesn't have to look like owning a business. Excuse me. That can perhaps just look like getting super good at sales, finding a company to work for that's not like a big corporation already, that's not super popular, and like mastering your skill set of like sales and marketing and like, build a solid skill set of multiple skills that all complement each other in the world of business, let's say, or the professional realm, and then take those to a company that is not very well known and help them to rise up to be a much better company, put them on the map, so to speak, through hard work and dedication, admittedly, and consistency of you honing your skills and becoming a valuable asset to that company to where you can eventually rise your way through the ranks and establish yourself in a position that's like indispensable and making solid money, that whatever amount your target is, whatever amount you would be comfortable making for however long. And then, that could be a career path. University's not necessary anymore unless you're trying to go to be like a lawyer, which you go to law school for, or if you want to be some sort of doctor or engineer or cellular biologist, some shit like that. Like, yes, you need formal higher education. You need that specialization and that training. Never would try to, discredit that because that's facts. I would not want a surgeon operating on my heart or my brain if he did not go through rigorous higher education and training to earn that education, to earn that skill set, and to earn that position as a surgeon. However, if you are simply looking to get a degree so you can find a nice career that pays well as a consequence of that degree, then you are sadly mistaken and you're operating off of old things that used to work but do not work anymore. I wouldn't just shit on college. There's other reasons you might want to go to college too, like for connections, the social benefits. You like the connections thing. You'll meet a whole lot of people. They could become invaluable to your net worth. Your network, like the whole network is your net worth thing. That's not entirely true, but that can play into the income that you're able to earn. That can play into opportunities that you could have in the future, is having like a network of people who are all like driven towards success, let's say, and education. But a degree doesn't equal a job anymore. And it's this, even like there's multiple dimensions to this, but even on a basic level of supply and demand, we have so many people with degrees now that the supply is so high that the demand has no choice but to lower, right? Because we've got so much of the supply of it. It's basic economics, like the most fundamental you can get. And so, like, it doesn't equal a good career or money anymore. So you would be just as well off teaching yourself rigorously the way that you would learn in college too, by the way, like reading research articles, writing papers on the material, reporting on the material, doing your own cognitive work, making deductions and then arguments and after analysis, and like teach yourself the way that you would learn in college. And by the way, you can engage in book clubs or different groups online or in person to engage with other people in dialogue over these topics, whether that be philosophy, economics, literature, whatever the case is, anything in the humanities, psychology. You can engage with people on these topics to further your education, to simulate the discussions you would have with the professor in the classroom. You could watch debates and lectures in person and online. There is a way to teach yourself, give yourself a university education for free at home on your own time without cramming, without stressful deadlines, especially if you have kids. That's a lot more fruitful of an option. Pick a skill set or a trade or whatever you want to do to make money, preferably something you're passionate about, and then pursue it that way. This old played out shit don't work no more though.
Where you will tend to that lawn and it will be your pride and it will represent your ability to put your children through college or retire with dignity. And to the fact that when you look at similarly situated other people, they're not getting arrested and prosecuted.
They had no epidurals.
Yeah.
Like she had to give a natural childbirth, didn't want to, lost a lot of blood.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, why? Like you knew we were coming. Right. It was just like, it was almost like oh, well, we don't have any epidurals. You want to push it out, push it out. Like,
wow.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
What the hell? What hospital was that?
I don't want to say that.
But and you know people, and you're not right.
And I got a little change.
And you're right.
Yeah.
Right. So there, so the issues that range, that exist, that need to be addressed and prioritized include everything from education to the healthcare system to the criminal justice system to the economy. And I will also say this, that people need to understand that when we talk about the agenda for Black America, that is about America's agenda. It needs to be about America's agenda. I'll tell you, it's been interesting. I actually gave a speech at Netroots Nation a few months ago on the issue of identity politics. Because I've been disturbed by how people are using this phrase identity politics, because they use it in a way that is to basically have you shut up when you're talking about issues of race or gender or sexual orientation. Right? Oh, that's identity politics, right? You're playing that card. And here's my point.
Correction. You are playing that card.
Let's not be shut up when we're talking about civil rights issues. Because the way that we handle and address those issues is a statement about who we are as Americans.
And where has that gotten us? We got kids who can't even have tattoos until they're 18, can't drink or smoke cigarettes until they're 21, somehow able to go to a doctor, tell them their parents won't acknowledge their pronouns or condone them getting their dicks chopped off as pre-teenage boys, 12 and under, and then as a consequence, Child Protective Services comes in and takes your kids away from you because you're not fit to be a parent because of emotional abuse. That is a problem. But of course, it's identity politics. So anybody just trying to get you to shut up about being in favor of kids being mutilated is just a fucking bigot, and they're just trying to pull that card to get you to be quiet, bro. Your ideas speak for themselves to anyone who's listening.
And our identity as Americans. The way we treat Black people in America is an indication of America's identity, right? So let's be clear about that, one. Two, and this is what I find to be very interesting as well. I am on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I'm on Senate Homeland Security Committee. So we've been studying the fact, some might want to debate it, including 45. We will not. Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States.
Right.
So if you look at the public reporting that has come out of the intelligence community, you will see that the Russians basically, they played around with certain things to see what would catch fire, what would create conflict, what would get people off their game in a way that would disrupt our democracy and people's confidence in our democracy. Number one issue.
Mr. Biden, no balls. Sure as hell didn't help.
Race. So here's the other thing I say to folks. Well, if you didn't otherwise care about race as an issue in America that needs to be dealt with, if you otherwise want to say, oh, it's their issue or it's just a civil rights issue, guess what? The Russians have made very clear, if we weren't before, that the issue of race is America's Achilles heel. And it has now become an issue that is not only about civil rights, but also an issue that is about national security.
What's an issue about national security is this fucking border.
How about that? How about that?
Yeah. I think when it comes to, black people in America, Democrats, for whatever reason, when you ask them, you're the first person to say, hey, do you have an agenda for black people to actually lay something out? Usually we get that whole rising tide lifts all boats. We're all Americans rhetoric. And I think black people just want to hear specific things for them. And I always wonder, why are people afraid to say what they would specifically do for black people?
I don't know, but I think that we have to speak truth. And when we speak truth, it is based on fact, and the way that you know fact is you inform yourself and educate yourself. And on this subject, it's about recognizing that there are huge disparities in this country based on race.
Absolutely.
That still ain't a solution to his question. Let's just assume that there was some merit to it for the sake of argumentation. That's still not an answer. Maybe she'll give one. Let's keep listening.
Ooh.
And they cannot be denied, and they must be addressed. We can't talk, look, here's the thing, and I'll also set this point. I am not mad at anybody for playing by the rules, working hard, and achieving success. I applaud that. I also know that in America today, and probably for a long time, if not forever, not everyone has equal access to an opportunity to achieve success. So,
no, everybody does have enough access to opportunity to achieve success. The thing is a lot of people aren't aware of that opportunity around them that is there because they are indoctrinated and brainwashed by people like you, and they don't think for themselves to break out of that cycle. The opportunity for me to get out the streets and do what I'm doing now has been there the entire time. I just didn't realize it until I had my son and subsequently had an epiphany that made me realize that I wanted to change and start looking into how to do it. And then once I did that, I started figuring out, oh, all I got to do is learn some shit, and then I'll know how to do what I want to do. And then, well, all of a sudden it becomes possible. All of a sudden, the only way that it can't be possible is if I decide not to go for it in the first place, or if I decide to quit, or if I die before it happens. The opportunity is there. You got a smartphone, like they got government phones now that you can get and start a fucking TikTok account completely for free. If you got a food stamp card, you can get a government phone that, by the way, this ain't it. Obviously, this is my phone. But you can get a smartphone, not an iPhone, but you could get an intelligent phone with internet, call, and text on it, touch screen, with a camera from the government if you have a food stamp card. If you got EBT, you could get a government phone that is now updated to smartphones that you could download apps like TikTok and YouTube, etc. on, record videos, and upload them for free. Don't tell me that people don't have equal access to the opportunity. The opportunity is there. People just need to be informed about it. People just need to think for themselves, and people need to stop giving in to being brainwashed by individuals like you, Kamala.
When we're talking about
this, by the way, I'm almost positive is just her using the rhetoric to try to spark up emotions and psychological responses inside of everybody here, or anybody listening to her for that matter, especially black people. Speculation, but likely the case.
Recognizing the inequalities, the inequities. It's not about saying I'm trying to take from those who have achieved success if they've played by the rules and worked hard. Good for you, keep it. But I am saying we need to be honest and address that not everyone has an equal opportunity to access to success, and we've got to address that.
So how?
And then that's going to be about everything that we have discussed, from the education system to access to affordable housing, to having a job that gives you a living wage, because nobody in America should have to work more than one job to be able to pay their bills. So we could go on and on.
What do you stand on some form?
Let's go on and on then. Like, what are the pragmatic solutions to those problems you just raised? What are the steps to take to accomplish those solutions that you suggested? Let's stay on that for a minute. Don't speed past it. You threw out some hypotheticals. Do you have plans? Because first of all, I disagree with the rhetoric to begin with, but like, again, for the sake of argument, do you have plans? Have you actually, you coming off pretentiously like you've thought about these things? Maybe it's not pretentious. Maybe you've thought about them. So if that's the case, giving you the benefit of the doubt, how about you lay out some concrete ideas that you have, considering you are running to be the president of the United States? Let's hear some concrete shit. Charlemagne literally just pointed out how a lot of politicians will be like, oh, giving all this rhetoric, but then like, where's the action behind it? Where's the pragmatic, practical steps that are going to be taken? How can we trust and know that you are not like all the other politicians? Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to me anyways as if she would be able to provide such concrete steps, because A, she don't have the permission and she hasn't been briefed by her fucking superiors that operate the machine she's a part of in order to give such information. And B, she probably doesn't have any concrete information. And especially if she is just a part of that machine, the Democratic machine, or the DNC machine, then she probably is one of those people who doesn't really think for herself all that much. She probably has a higher baseline of it than most people, just because she's had to go through higher education. She's had some formal training and education in thinking and source citation and credibility and shit like that. So like, she knows more than the average individual, more than likely, and thinks more for herself and more independently than likely the average individual does. But still, nonetheless, she's part of a machine that thinks for her. Like, that's my observation. The DNC thinks for their candidates. They don't. Man, anyway, let's go.
Reparations for black people. Did you see Mayor de Blasio saying the marijuana economy could be a form of reparations? Marianne Williamson says black people should get $100 billion in slavery reparations. Like, where do you stand on it?
Well, look, I think that we have got to address that. Again, it's back to the inequities. There, through, look, America has a history of 200 years of slavery. Mm-hmm. We had Jim Crow. We had legal segregation in America for a very long time. The Voting Rights Act was only strong for 50 years, and then they wiped it out with this United States Supreme Court in the Shelby decision, to the point that 22 states immediately thereafter put in place laws that one court found were crafted with surgical precision to have black people not be able to vote. So we've got to recognize, back to that earlier point, people aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to...
What is standing in the way right now as of Saturday, July 27th, 2024? What is standing in the way of anybody, regardless of ethnicity, color, country, nationality, whatever? what's standing in the way in America on a systemic or legislative level that is preventing one individual from accessing opportunities that are available to another individual? Please, again, even you guys in the comments, please, if you guys have any proof of anything like this, like hard, credible, concrete proof that this type of thing exists, genuinely, please let me know. Even if you don't want to comment it, you could send it to my email, support@cavenhinchy.com. Because if I am wrong and I have not been able to find anywhere where this is the case, then I want to know. Like, actually want to know. Because unlike some people, I genuinely care about the truth. So, that was halfway smart ass, but I'm serious to you guys. If you guys have proof to the contrary of what I believe, then please do let me know.
To recognize that and give people a lift up. And there are a number of ways to do it. Part of my initiative, again, around the LIFT Act is that same point. You're lifting people up who are making less than $100,000 a year. What I want to do about rent is the same thing.
Define lifting up. What does that even mean? Stop using these ambiguous words that you could just fucking use as rhetoric to worm your way through a conversation without answering anything. Give concrete answers. What are your solutions?
What we need to do around education and understanding disparities, what we need to do around HBCUs. But we have a history of racism in America.
So you are for some type of
Yes, I am.
reparation? Okay.
Yes, I am.
You know what worries me and bothers me? Well, scares me, I should say. When I seen Bernie and Hillary running, people rolled for Bernie so much that when she actually won, they turned their back and they did not want to have anything to do with Hillary, which was part of the reason why I felt like she lost. Do you have that fear, or is there a game plan for that? Because there's so many people running. There's going to be people that's going to be gun-ho with Cory Booker and gun-ho with you and gun-ho with whoever runs, whoever else runs. Is that some type of, I guess, strategy to make sure that if one of those people don't make it and you make it, that those people ride with you? Because if they don't, it's going to be like it's kind of divided so much that we have 45 again.
It is my hope and prayer that we do not divide and hit each other when we have a common purpose and a common goal. When I first made the decision.
Does he mean Trump by 45? I'm pretty sure that's what he meant. Have 45 again. 45th president. He talking about Trump, right?
Run, I actually called a number of my colleagues who had either announced or I knew were thinking about announcing to make just that point and to reach out to them. I have a great deal of respect for the folks who have decided to run, and I know there are others who are seriously thinking about it who I also respect. I would hope that we understand that there is so much at stake right now. We are at an inflection point in the history of our country.
Dude, I have been saying this. You're supposed to be a candidate for the president of the United States of America, and you get up here spitting the same exact shit that everybody's complaining about. Everybody, even people that don't think for themselves, who are just copying and pasting this shit. It's theory. You have anything concrete?
And to your point about the 2016 election, we would be at an inflection point even if he hadn't been elected. The world is
so he probably was talking about Trump when he said 45.
Changing. You can look, economies are rising and falling in different countries. You see population shifting. We're certainly not talking enough about climate change and what that is going to do in a very short matter of time for that new baby. In terms of what world.
Climate change may be a scientific dilemma, like genuinely may be an issue for the future, but we have much more pressing matters to attend to right now. Way more important shit to deal with than climate change and global warming. It's just a fact. Like shit, it is a problem. Like we do face an existential threat via climate change and so on, but it's not as pressing as some other things. That's what killed. And another thing about the whole fucking everybody complaining about population or overpopulation whenever we're literally headed towards the opposite, towards population collapse on the trajectory that we're on. It's crazy.
Our children are going to live in it, and our grandchildren are going to live. So there's so much that's happening. And this is a moment that's actually, I find very exciting to think about. What is our plan for what will be America's standing in the world given so much change that is happening?
That's the question.
And so at least I'll speak for myself.
Right.
That's the prize my eye is on, which is to look at where we need to be, unburdened by where we have been. That's
There it is, man. Ooh. Where we could be, unburdened by what has been. Oh man, I was wondering if I was gonna hear it. Yeah, it's funny. Okay, let's go.
That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about a vision of America in which everyone can see themselves.
It sounds to me like you're thinking about a bunch of theory that has been fed to you by the DNC without actually providing any substantial anything to substantiate any sort of steps to be taken. Like you're spouting off what these problems are, like what you think needs to be addressed, but you're not offering any solutions at all. And the hypothetical solutions that you have mentioned for a couple of things in passing have been very vague and ambiguous and oh god.
And, I'll leave it to my campaign folks to deal with, the stuff that's in the side mirror.
Weren't your parents civil rights activists?
Yeah, they were active. My mother was actually a breast cancer researcher, but they met when they were active in civil rights movement. Yeah, Maya and I, my sister, we joke we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting.
Yeah, and see, that's what bugs me out about the criticism you receive, because it's like your parents were civil rights activists. You were born in Oakland. Oakland's a black ass town.
Oh yeah.
You went to Howard University. So why do people say things like she's pandering to black people?
They don't know.
Because she's pretentious.
Me. And I, listen, I think that also, some folks have a limited vision of who we are as black people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on them. That's not on us.
Look, my mama from the hood too. My mom grew up with me. She's from the hood too, but she married a redneck. Guess what happened after that? After so many years of being married, or she didn't technically get married to him, but she was like in love with him and shit. I like, in my mind, it's like really no different. They were engaged. But I am the way I am. You see me, what I look like, how I talk, which is actually even changed for myself over time since I cut off all my old people and stay mostly to myself for the last several years with my son. And his mom and her family are also like very southern country white folk. So and that's influenced me too. And I'm talking about me already being grown more or less. And still like my down to my accent, everything changing over a matter of like 4 or 5 years, but more than that. But over like less than a decade, my whole like demeanor, the way I carry myself, my speech, my diction, the way I sound when I speak, my accent, everything, a lot different and influenced by my environment within a much shorter period of time than, from college to old enough to run for president of the United States. My mom, to get back to that point, grew up with me, right? She was like, 18 when she had me? So from 18 throughout her entire life until like early 40s, she is ghetto as fuck, right? Hood. My mama's hood. All throughout these years, just like I was, all throughout these years, from Knoxville, Tennessee to Indianapolis, Indiana, and back. Yet she got with this redneck dude named Junior, and then all of a sudden, over the course of 4 years or so, something like that, she become a Southern belle. Started talking like real country, like this. Shout out, Mom. I love you, but you turned redneck for a while after that, and now you still got traces of that, even though you're starting to ease back into the way I remember you. You still got permanent traces of that in you, from the influence of Junior. And then everybody you're surrounded with now, and the environment of friends that you keep now, talking to my mom specifically, you are still, forever changed. And so my whole point with even saying this is and we're talking about shorter time periods than compared to her going from college or where she grew up to where she is now, because that whole time she's been surrounded by people in politics, a bunch of wealthy people, more or less, people who are significantly detached from the streets, which is what she seems to have in her mind when she's trying to get the black vote.
People need to be educated about who we are.
It seems like some of it comes from us, though. Like, it's like, oh, she doesn't even identify as a black woman. I've even seen Kamala Dolezal memes. I'm like, huh?
What's that?
Yo, Rachel Dolezal.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I can't. I hope that folks will, at the end of the day, understand that the outcome of this election is going to have a profound impact on the lives of real people.
We agree with that.
And I hope at the end of the day that people will focus on who is going to have their best interest in mind
by what has been,
and work hard to uplift and empower and unite the folks of our country. And that's where people are going to have to, ultimately land. And obviously they can make their decisions based on what they see and what they hear.
Your truancy program got a lot of criticism, too. Did you actually lock anybody up?
No, we never locked anybody up. That was an initiative that was focused on my belief that education is a fundamental right. My belief that a child going without an education is something that all of us as a community should be highly concerned with.
Just to pause on that real quick. I probably won't get into it in this video because I'll end up in another side rant. But on the education reform front, I actually have a lot of concrete ideas, as well as a lot of grievances with the way our education system is set up. And so I do have actually videos that are already in progress being made to teach people how to self-educate, like with concrete steps, plus the theory and understanding the neuroscience behind it, how it all works. And then also on a social change front, like the social activist front, I've actually got some ideas and concrete steps of how things might be implemented on a again social level to actually foster these changes in our education system, which, by the way, starts locally. We got to get involved locally before this can actually start to, really change, before we can actually start to see change. And it's going to have to be with like a lot more of us than just little as me and, some people here and there in some different states and communities and shit. Like, we're gonna have to actually bring some real attention and awareness to this education reform idea, because I do agree that the education system needs to be reformed because it's based on the Prussian model, which was literally designed to create obedient, like, soldier slaves, more or less, for their militant society. And then we've adopted it and wonder why kids with ADHD can't sit still in a seat and make good grades in school. and grades are like plummeting year after year in schools, and then people go to university and higher education largely ill prepared, and a lot of people drop out even of community colleges and universities. A lot of people don't even finish high school. I think that fundamentally, uh, I said I wasn't gonna get all into it, but just one last thing on the education thing. I think if we taught kids as early as possible, all throughout school, as part of remodeling the way that our education system works, if we taught kids how to think, how to critically analyze and use logic and reasoning, and how to think through questions, how to know what questions to ask, and how to discover which questions to ask if you don't already know what questions to ask, and maybe even some philosophy and like an emphasis on literature and philosophy and like these types of things. If they were taught from as early as you could possibly teach them all throughout school, whatever the new system looked like, dude, talk about revolutionary. I'll leave it at that, but I'm telling y'all that would be some revolutionary shit. And those are like real pragmatic things that could be implemented even with the existing school system. Those types of things could be implemented just with some shifts in the approach, considering psychology and all these things, and neuroscience, educational neuroscience, taking these implications to heart and then using them to fuel some activism to reform the education. Anyways, I won't get too deep into that. I'll make another video about it, and I'll reference it here somewhere if I remember.
And we should put in place incentives to get children into school every day. Here's the thing that was behind that. I did an analysis of who the homicide victims were who were under the age of 25 when they were killed when I was DA. And over 90% of them are high school dropouts. When I started to look at the statistics, I realized that 82% of the prisoners in the United States are high school dropouts. And African-American man between the age of, I think it's 30 and 34, who is a high school dropout, is 2/3 likely to be in jail, have been in jail, or dead. There is a direct connection between public education and public safety. I looked at the issue of elementary school truancy. And elementary school truant is 2 to 3 times more likely to be a high school dropout. I looked at the issue of third grade reading level, something that we really need to understand. If by the end of third grade, a child is not at third grade reading level, they literally drop off. Because before third grade, a child is learning how to read. Then comprehension kicks in, and they're reading to learn. If they've not learned how to read, if they can't read the word Egypt, they will never understand how folks built the pyramids. Right? So
she's on to something with that point, because folks not understanding history and how we got to where we are, understanding the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, for example, and that's a distant one. How about American history, a U.S. history, the non-distorted, objectively true version of, like, and largely, people just don't care. Like, kids don't care. It's hard for them to sit in school and pay attention to these things and get interested in them, and then they make bad grades because it's just bland as hell. Like, there's ways to educate people that actually engage them, and learning is supposed to be a balance of like anxiety, angst from like being in an uncomfortable zone, and learning things that you're uncomfortable with because you don't know them, and especially if you're just getting started, it's supposed to be very uncomfortable and maybe even a little bit scary in a certain context when you're learning something new, if actual learning is taking place. But that's also supposed to be sort of blunted a little bit and compensated. Well, let's say balanced. That's supposed to be balanced with genuine enjoyment when real learning is taking place, because that gives you a reason to care, regardless of what that reason is. If you have a reason of why what you're learning matters, and if you are feeling the angst and discomfort around learning something new because it's new information you don't know about, those two things are present, then more than likely genuine learning is occurring. And again, I'm not going to get in this video into all the science, the neuroscience of learning and and theories and applications and shit, because I've got actually at least two videos that go into that. One of them that goes exclusively into pedagogy in that regard. So I'm not going to get too deep into it, but excuse me, there are ways to make this happen pragmatically, and there are very good reasons to do so. And like I said, that discomfort plus the enjoyment of it have to both be present at the same time for learning to matter, because your brain is constantly trying to prune information. And so, and it's got like a hole in the bottom of the barrel, because the whole process of learning, to summarize it without getting into too much detail, is it looks like you take in information by reading, listening, whatever, and then that goes into your sensory memory, which then goes into your long-term memory, which then goes into your working memory. And then whenever you start to encode, is the term for it, things from your working memory into your long-term memory, the things that are in your long-term memory you can then use to recall. That's where you remember things like dates and facts and concepts and things that you've already learned. You can retrieve them from that. And then the more often you retrieve and the more different ways that you use the information when you retrieve it, the more connections you're going to form in the network of knowledge around whatever that topic you're studying is. And it's going to provide a higher level of learning, a higher level of mastery over the domain that you're studying in. And so none of this stuff happens at all without discomfort and enjoyment at the same time, because the enjoyment is what prevents your brain from pruning that information as useless, because it registers if you're enjoying it, or if you know why it matters to learn and know the things that you're learning, then you have a reason to contextualize why you're stuffing these facts in your brain and trying to fit them into networks.
Focused on this, understanding that so many of the children in our community are at risk for not going to school every day while they're in elementary school. And it is not a function of that parent's love for the child. It is usually a function of that parent's ability to have the resources they need to take care of what needs to happen on a daily basis. And here's the other thing that I realized in doing this work. You know, there are also, we have certain myths, and we think that, oh, you know, if that child doesn't go to school every day in elementary school, they'll catch up, they'll be fine. They'll, you know, when they get to middle school and high school, they'll go to school every day.
But she's just saying obvious shit. I'm trying to find where she was talking about smoking weed and shit. Hang on, guys, man. I'm gonna find this shit. Excuse me. Legalizing marijuana. I got into it anyway.
Didn't lock up parents when their kids didn't go to school. I'm just trying to clear up all the BS.
Yeah, no.
Also, and I know the answer to this too, they say you oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
and look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?
Of course, she inserted this.
They be so mad at you.
Right. No, I do not. No. I have had concerns. The full record. I have had concerns, which I think first of all, let me just make the statement very clear. I believe we need to legalize marijuana.
Oh, there she goes. That one's going to get her a lot of votes, man. Yeah, bro.
Now, that being said, this is not a but, it is an and. And we need to research, which is one of the reasons we need to legalize it. We need to move it on the schedule so that we can research the impact of weed based on a developing brain. Mm-hmm. You know, that part of the brain that develops judgment actually begins its growth at age 18 through age 24.
The frontal cortex.
Is that the prefrontal cortex specifically? I know it affects the amygdala, like it dulls your shit, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to fact check that real quick. I'm pretty sure that your brain is actually blunted, like your amygdala, for figuratively speaking, is blunted when smoking marijuana. But I actually also know that a lot of people have completely opposite experiences, neuropsychologically, neurochemically, to smoking the same exact weed, the same amount. They have completely polar opposite experiences based on the individual. So I know that that is also a factor, according to what we know. But hang on, let's see. Yeah, so it is the prefrontal cortex. It says ventromedial prefrontal cortex involved in moral judgment. Lateral prefrontal lobe helps calculate future utility and override emotional responses during decision making. And right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is activated during logical thinking in personal scenarios. And so it is the frontal lobe collectively. But I was thinking specifically prefrontal cortex, though it's the entire frontal lobe that is. That's what she's talking about.
Cortex, I think.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right. So we've got to take that seriously. And so I believe that we need to research that because I believe we don't fully know the consequences. The other issue that we've got to address.
We do know that it stunts the cap off of your cognition, like your level of development, let's say, in some regard, if you smoke before the age of 25 to 28 for men and women respectively. I think 28 for men and 25 for women, because those are the maximum developmental ages. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong about that, but those are the cap off ages of development for men and women respectively.
Address is how we're going to measure impairment when somebody has been smoking weed in terms of driving. You know, these are details that some people may not want to hear about or talk about. But look, I started my work when Mothers Against Drunk Driving were active because so many young people were being killed because of people who were driving under the influence.
Right.
So it's a real issue, you know, and this is my background and this is how I think about things. And that's just a fact. If somebody is driving a car, it can be a lethal weapon in the hands of somebody who is impaired. So that needs to be addressed also. But I am absolutely in favor of legalizing marijuana. We've got to do it. We have incarcerated so many, in particular young men and young men of color, in a way that we have not for the same level of use other young men. And we've got to deal with that in addition to dealing with the fact that
statistically, how about we look at why on that little attempt to slide in the racial card on that matter? How about we look at why the comparisons are unequal, where and when they are unequal? I don't deny that sometimes that race is involved on an individual level, but come on now, you gotta. It's something looked down upon in logic to provide such statistics or reasoning based on statistics that are like being misrepresented. Like, you can't misrepresent statistics. And she didn't even reference any specific statistics. I'm pretty sure I know what she was referencing. I could be wrong about that too, because it's not explicit, it's implicit in what she's talking about. So, you know, bear that in mind, but I'm pretty sure I know what she's referencing.
Not all drugs are the same. And when we're talking about marijuana, look, I have forever been an advocate for medicinal marijuana. I have personally known people who only benefited from its use. So there are a lot of reasons why we need to legalize.
Have you ever smoked?
Here we go.
I have.
Okay. Like in
And
college,
I inhale. I did inhale.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. But yes.
I know you have to go. They say you have to go. I just
broke news.
I mean, was it in college? See, I like stuff like that. That's a real honest answer.
real.
Was it a blunt or joint?
It was a joint.
Hey.
Yeah.
You remember the high?
I don't know. It already just looks like she's lying, honestly.
I do.
So if it was legalized all throughout the country and medicinal, would you do it?
Listen, I think that it gives a lot of people joy, and we need more joy.
We need more joy in this world.
Another myth is I don't know if it's a myth, but they say you took campaign donations from big banks.
No, no, I have not taken from corporations and big banks. I don't believe that I have. No.
Now, I also wanted to know before you have to go.
And in fact, I fought the big banks and fought them, and it was a vicious battle.
I'm not sure about that one. I don't know.
Because I held out. When I was Attorney General of California during the mortgage and foreclosure crisis, I would not take the deal that they were giving to other states. And I pulled California out of it because I said it wasn't enough. And we got into a big old battle where the banks really took me on. They were sending leaflets, or at least we believe it came from them, around the country saying, if Kamala Harris doesn't get back in this settlement, then you won't get this or you will get this. It was a high-pressure battle that we won. But that's my history with the
What
banks.
do you listen to? Because I know she has to go. So what does Kamala Harris listen to?
What were you listening to when you was high? What was on? What song was it?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, definitely Snoop. Tupac, for sure.
What do you listen to now? What's your favorite hip-hop artist now? What's your favorite artist?
You know who I really love is Cardi B.
You like Cardi B?
I really do.
Okay.
I really do. Everybody gets really just jokes. Sometimes I just turn on "Be Careful of Me."
That's your favorite joint.
Well, it's one of them. I think she's so fantastic. But there's so many.
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, my favorite movie.
You and the hubby, long day, sit back, have a little wine. What do you put on?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's so many. Recently, I was Beale Street is a beautiful movie. That's probably recently my most favorite.
What's your favorite place to go to relax? When this is over, you say, I'm gonna take a couple days and go here. Where's that?
My kitchen and start cooking.
The kitchen. What's your favorite meal to cook?
Curry goat.
Yeah, man.
Jerk chicken.
Yeah, man. them gonna bush and bring me back a goat and I cook it up.
What's your favorite meal to cook?
It ranges. I make a really mean bolognese. I cook it for about 4 hours. Bolognese. It's like it's an Italian meat sauce.
Oh, okay.
And then I do it with like pork and veal and beef.
You eat pork still?
Yeah, I eat the pig.
Jesus Christ.
Sometimes.
That might do it for me. I don't know if I can support that.
I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up though. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I would love to know, especially on some of the specific talking points. Do you guys agree with anything that she said? Do you agree with anything that I've said? Maybe do you have any ideas that weren't mentioned by either of us that could be fruitful for the American people collectively? And who are you gonna vote for? Just let me know in the comments, man. I'll see y'all on the next video. Peace.